Hello and welcome to another edition of Planet Waves TV. My name's Eric Francis Coppolino, your host for the next 15 minutes or so, here to tell you about all kinds of things related to the sun's transit through the sign Gemini. The sun entered Gemini on Friday the 20th. That was followed by the full moon on Saturday the 21st, which was or will be followed by Mercury stationing direct on Sunday the 21st. So we get a lot of quick action, quick paced changes, and notice the relationship among all of them involving things of a Gemini or Mercury nature. For example, the sun entering Gemini, a full moon in Sagittarius along the Gemini-Sagittarius axis, and then Mercury, the ruler of Gemini, stationing direct. This is all kinds of environmental influences and let's say evolution, progress, and changes in the realm of communications where we spend so much of our time these days, such as right now. So let's take a look at how that looks on the solar chart for Gemini. And by the way, I'm cooking up a presentation that will explain this. This is a representation of the solar chart for a Gemini. And one of the things I'm intending to do very soon, possibly even today or this week, is to explain what a solar chart is and why every sign is so different. Here's the solar chart for the sign Cancer, which I haven't stuck to my canvas yet. And I'm going to compare the solar charts for two adjoining signs. That will be in the next video or a special edition video. For now, let's look at the current solar chart for Gemini. And by the way, this is the solar chart for all the time for Gemini. But if we're looking at the current chart, we put the planets in the positions that they are in now, and we look at how they relate to one another now. And as the great Patrick Walker said, it's all in the houses. If you understand the houses, you are about halfway to understanding all of astrology, because the houses are where things happen. Okay, so referencing the chart for Gemini, since the sun is now in Gemini, that's what it looks like when you represent it. And what's interesting is that the sun entered Gemini right about the same time as my personal favorite asteroid, Vesta. Vesta is the asteroid of the hearth. She's the keeper of the hearth. And so as history and to some extent mythology tell the story, in ancient Rome, every city had a city fire. There was a fire kept and tended around the clock, and the fire was tended by these women called the Vestal Virgins, and their job was to never let the fire go out, the city fire go out. They served for a term of 30 years, from approximately age 7 till just before age 40, when they ended their term of service. Why is Siri talking to me? Is Siri always listening to me? How do I do this? I'm gonna put this damn thing into airplane mode. Gemini shit. All right. So they would be recruited to their term of service at 7 years old, and then serve till approximately age 40. Then they had the option to retire from the order or to continue to serve in a kind of a senior role. And so there's a lot of things we get from Vesta that we learn pretty much from the Vestal Virgins, including the holding of space function that Vesta has. The way I think of this is that homes used to be organized around the hearth. You would have to build this stone fireplace to contain the fire that you would depend upon for heat and for cooking, and then you'd build the house around the hearth. And so the hearth is the center of the home, and that is the way to think of Vesta. The hearth is the center of the home. Additionally, tending the fire is one of the central metaphors of Vesta, in the sense that it is a devotion, and we get the theme of devotion from that. And because the Vestal Virgins were sexually chaste, or so we are told, and so their reputation has it, the idea of sublimating sexual energy into some other form of service is a Vestal function. Currently, I consider that to be something of a shadow side of Vesta, though the part of that that is not a shadow is to say that people with a prominent Vesta in their chart, by prominent I mean conjunct the sun, conjunct the moon, in the first house, in one of the angular houses like the 10th or the 7th, also can indicate a different story of relationships than other seemingly normal people seem to have. So when we have Vesta conjunct the sun, anyway, that counts as a prominent Vesta for all of us. There she is, conjunct the sun right there in early Gemini. And this is about devotion, and it's saying work your space, use your space. In Vision Quest, I wrote one of my favorite annual readings ever for Taurus, when Vesta was in Taurus, called Space is Intelligence. And Vesta is the principle of space as intelligence and the principle of the use of space. So pay attention to what's going on in your physical space and help your physical space. Love it, tidy it, take care of it, be devoted, and appreciate the physical space you have. I do realize a lot of people in this era live with their parents and live with roommates and so forth, but still, we do tend to have it a lot better than people in many other countries who live in shacks and in shanties and in shoebox size apartments instead of our refrigerator box size apartments that we have here. And this is just about loving your space. Now, also, additionally, there is this kind of message of creative devotion, of taking the fire that is represented by the sun and channeling that fire into creative and productive ideas. There's also a sexual theme with Vesta, and that is the theme of service and to some extent submission. We have a hard time with that these days. We want sexual pleasure without the submissive element to it. This is about yin being completely out of balance. This is why porno is so popular, because it gives you a kind of a charge of sexual pleasure, but without any special necessity to open up or to submit in any way. Now, where does this become an issue? It becomes an issue when we consider the fact that the sun and Vesta are going to be square a group of planets in Pisces, and by square I mean on a 90-degree axis. The way this looks in the solar chart is Gemini is one of the blue signs, a mutable sign, and Pisces is a mutable sign, one of the blue signs, and all of the signs on the same cross vibrate together. And so when we've got Sun Vesta in Gemini, and it's in aspect to Nessus, in particular Neptune and Chiron in Pisces, they are acting as a group. As we learned last week, it's also acting with the assistance of Sagittarius, all these planets here, and then also with Virgo. Jupiter is in Virgo. At the moment, let's focus on the relationship between the Sun in Gemini and Vesta in Gemini, and then this group of planets in Pisces. Now, when Nessus is in the picture, that's this little green thingy here. It's like Chiron, only with an N as the letter on top of the ellipsis. This is a reminder to take responsibility. Carolyn Mace has a concept that I'm appreciating more and more as time goes on, and that concept is woundology. This is the kind of elevation of one's personal injury to sacred status. It's basically the worship of wounding. This is closely related to Christianity, which is basically the worship of wounding, even though it's not supposed to be. And you could say, to sum it up, that it is really about making other people suffer for our sins or for our own injuries. And so what woundology is about holding any space where you might be hurt as a special or sacred or sacrosanct place, rather than a place where you open it up to the light and you invite in healing. And so where Nessus is in the picture, we have this question of woundology. And the reason Nessus is in the picture is because the Sun is currently making a square 90-degree aspect to Nessus, and Vesta is going to be doing that too for quite a while, actually, for a couple of weeks. Now, right behind Nessus is Neptune. They're quite close together, and Neptune has an orb that is the widest orb of all the planets, and so the Sun is very much square Neptune right now. And when you see something really in any major aspect to Neptune, particularly something like the Sun or the Moon square Neptune, the question is, what is true? Is this really true? And so, if you're in some way dealing with a past injury of some kind, if you're feeling like you keep getting caught in the same hurt place over and over again, or the same pattern arises in your relationships, now we have a reminder from Neptune to ask ourselves, is this thing true? Is the way that I'm describing this problem really the actual problem, or is the description just simply inaccurate in some way? And when we have Vesta in the picture, this is an invitation to consciously make the space for healing rather than just making the space for being hurt. If being hurt or injured or wounded in some way has a point, that point is healing. It's not all about the injury, though we're basically told this over and over again, and we're told over and over again that we have to live with these injuries that are never going to heal. I have not cast the asteroid Psyche into this chart, but I've been noticing lately a correspondence between the asteroid Psyche and its themes and Nessus and its themes. And the main theme, the main message of the asteroid Psyche is to consider the possibility that what you think is an injury that can never heal is not actually that. It's merely a concept. It's kind of a psychic wound to believe that you're in you have some problem that can't heal, and Nessus can come with that. And the action recommended with Nessus is taking responsibility for what you are feeling. The key phrase for Nessus that I love the very best, it was come up with by Melanie Reinhardt, but it probably just emerged spontaneously in one of her workshops, is "the buck stops here." The buck is not a dollar, but rather the buckhorn that was passed around the table at poker, and the person who got the buck would have to deal. It was your turn to deal. The buckhorn would be passed, whatever direction it was, clockwise or counterclockwise, and when you got the buck, meaning the buckhorn, you would deal the cards. And what Nessus is saying is, the buck stops here, here is with you, and you're the one who gets to deal. And most of the problems that we think we have, number one, are multi-generational problems, and second, they are collective problems, not individual problems. And we like to think that our problem is just our personal problem, and like kind of we're entitled to it. Kind of like the TV commercial, "For my pain, I choose my Aleve." It's like the way that these commercial writers, these wizards, basically script it. My pain. It's like people are covetous of or as George Harrison said, even those tears, I, me, mine. And the reminder of Nessus is that what we are dealing with is what we are dealing with. There is a collective issue here. Where there is sexual pain, where there is sexual injury, there is a collective injury. It's not just you. However, if we're talking about your family line, your specific bloodline, then if the buck stops with you, you are the person who gets to address this problem. You are the one who says, all right, this is enough. In my particular bloodline, in my ancestral line, I'm going to be the place where this stops. I'm not going to pass this along to my children. I'm not going to pass this along to their children. I'm not going to instill, for example, the fears or the bad example in my grandchildren that my grandmother instilled in me. There's essentially a taking responsibility for one's emotional and spiritual condition with Nessus, and that is what is being reminded. And Vesta comes with a property of being able to hold space, to make space for actual healing rather than for woundology, the religion of the wound. Okay, so let's see what else is going on in this chart. So the Sun squares first Nessus, then Neptune, then the Sun continues. It's going to take a while, but all through this term of Pisces, for the first 3 weeks anyway, the Sun is working into a square with Chiron. Now, this is an interesting point to make about things that combine Gemini and Chiron. Things that combine Gemini and Chiron, to me, have one particular property, which is the underestimation of one's intelligence. Now, we do a lot of that in this culture. I happen to have a job, an editorship, store manager, let's say, where everyone in my organization has to possess the ability to make decisions on some level. There's no job at Planet Waves, for example, that doesn't require the ability to fully access and use one's intelligence. This has been true my entire career because I've been an editor for a long time. And you can see when you have to deal with people on the level of their actual intelligence, not cut up that box of carrots, right? You don't need to know that much to cut up that box of carrots. You just do it the way you're told to do it. But when you interact with people on the level of their ability to make judgments, make decisions, make assessments, you start to see where they're struggling with their own intelligence. Here's what I have to say to you. You are smarter than you think. Your mind is not as stuck as you think your mind is. Mercury stationing direct in Taurus, I would imagine, gives us all a little nudge forward on the level of whether we are actually stuck or whether our minds are mobile and able to move. Do we have what homeopaths sometimes call psychic mobility? Are we able to change our mind, basically? Now, as I described last week, I realized the charts were a little bit small. I apologize for that. There is a grand cross forming in the mutable signs. Again, these are the blue signs, right? So in Gemini, we have the Sun and Vesta moving through Gemini. In Virgo, we have Jupiter in Virgo. That's pretty important. That lasts, I think, till September when Jupiter moves into Libra. Currently, there's also Saturn in Sag and also Mars for a few more days. I'm going to end with that point. And then there's Nessus, Neptune in Chiron, and Borsisi in Pisces. We've got a lot of major players in the mutable signs. It's going to culminate with a grand cross new moon in the mutable signs on the 4th day of June. That is going to be an impressive aspect. Let's conclude with some thoughts about Mars retrograding into Scorpio. I've been prepping this one for a long time. I've written a lot of articles. I am on one of my periodic jaunts into being a professor of gender studies and doing a lot of explaining the gender mess that our society is in, and the way this is changing now, the sort of the sea change of the astrology at the moment is Mars retrograding into Scorpio. Mars has been retrograde in Sagittarius since around April 17th, and it's been gradually trekking its way back through Sagittarius. That looks like this. Where are you, Mr. Mars? It starts in Sagittarius, and it's right there. See that? I've got a little arrow next to Mars. So it's been in Sag, and then it's going to go into Scorpio here, where it's going to be retrograde until the end of June. Then it'll station direct. It's going to spend another month. So we're looking at 2 or more months of Mars in Scorpio after being in Sagittarius. This is about getting what you believe out of the way, getting all the jetsam and flotsam of religious conditioning out of the way. I'm about to record Miracle Hour for Sunday, and my Sunday sermon is going to be about how it is that basically religion as we know it gave us the choice of being either godly or a slut. That makes no sense whatsoever, absolutely less than zero. And so one of the things we've been able to question, and I've actually seen this happen, perhaps because I've just stirred up the conversation with the power of my pencil, but I have seen it happening, is a questioning of this whole matter of what is the conditioning of patriarchal religion and why it has chosen to separate us from our sexuality. And the reason why is because that separates us from the feminine. It leaves us with a domineering patriarchal concept of God that would be completely undermined by the experience of actual erotic communion with one another. And so to justify its own existence, patriarchal religion has had to not only mar the concept of the feminine, but it has done a vast disservice, for example, to people who brought in very simple teachings, as did Jesus, who never had anything bad to say about women and was only slightly cautionary about sex. Jesus' only mention of sex was, don't be a hypocrite. That's a pretty good teaching, right? But he, of course, was God incarnate. So when we get a concept of God that is totally against sex, which then gives us a concept of sex which is totally against God, we have a lot of problems. We've corrupted both sides of that equation. We've corrupted this kind of sky father divine concept and this earth mother, in body, in our senses part of experience. So Mars retrograding into Scorpio is now giving us the occasion to plunge into our actual feelings as apart from concept, as apart from God concept, which, by the way, is very different from God. Sagittarius can represent both, but in this kind of cerebralized version of philosophy that we get through these Abrahamic religions, it is basically cut us off from the reality and left us with a bunch of books and paper. And now Mars retrograding into Scorpio, which, by the way, happens on the 27th, so we get a few more days with that religious cover story getting ever thinner and thinner and thinner as Mars closes the gap between the end of Sagittarius and the beginning of Scorpio. The idea here is the direct contact with direct experience. Give it a go. Tell me what you have learned. efc@ericfrancis.com. All right, I will see you over at Miracle Hour in case you're interested in that, my kind of ongoing dialogue with A Course in Miracles. See you at Planet Waves FM on Tuesday. And don't forget, we are sponsored by your memberships to Planet Waves. If you like watching me here on Planet Waves TV, if you read my stuff and you like my horoscopes and you think, wow, this is a cool project, this is just what we need for our time, sign on up, whip out that plastic, get yourself a membership. If you can't afford it, email us. All right, that's all I have to say for now. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Kate and Anatoly in the Ukraine, for producing this video, and all else who help at Planet Waves. My name's Eric Francis Coppolino. Lots of love, and bye for now. New mic for this edition. How's the audio sound? I hope better. The mighty KSM 32. Love.